Welcome back, everybody. Today I am building a high-end gaming PC with knockoffs of some of the most highly coveted parts out there. We're going to see if the money saved on these components is worth how much they'll cost us in every other metric. Now obviously you can achieve the most savings if you just forget all the fancy stuff entirely. Hell, just put your PC in a cardboard box and Bob's your uncle. But with the booming trend of panoramic fish tanks, daisy-chainable RGB everything, and more, I thought a video like this might be helpful if you're chasing that kind of premium aesthetic on a budget. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Knockoff PC. Before we continue, this video is brought to you in part by CDKeyOffer.com. So I have 3 desktop PCs that I regularly bounce between, and all of them are running activated copies of Windows from keys that I got on CDKeyOffer.com. I've used many key sites in the past, but CDKeyOffer is the only one I've never had an issue with. I've never had a bad key, I've never had to call customer service, I've never had to email customer support, and I've never had to activate Windows over a phone, which is super fun. Right now you can get a Windows 10 Pro OEM key for around $22, but wait! Add it to your cart, use the 25% discount code BW20 at checkout, and the price drops to just $16.93. Buy Grabthar's hammer, what a savings. To use your new key, just go to your purchased orders from the drop-down menu to view and copy the key once you get there, and then paste that key into the Windows activation page. Voila! You've got an activated OS that's also eligible for a free upgrade to Windows 11. Alternatively, you can skip the upgrade and buy Windows 11 Pro directly using the same code BW20 to snag the OS for around $23. Activate the key using the aforementioned steps and get the full Windows experience easily and affordably. Thanks again to CDKeyOffer.com. Now back to the main video. Now I've done plenty of knockoff builds like this in the past, but they've mostly been budget rigs. So rather than simply finding the cheapest parts on the web, I sourced a lot of off-brand components that appeared more high-end and had positive reviews. There's only 2 name brand parts in this build. The CPU, of course, which is an AMD Ryzen 7 7800X 3D. Even with the new 9000 series around the corner, this might still be the fastest gaming CPU for a while until 3D V-Cache versions of the next-gen chips arrive. And the motherboard, a B650E Aorus Elite XAX Ice. Now there are a ton of boards from smaller brands, but not many high-end options with the features I wanted for this build, as you'll soon see. We've got a 12+2+2 phase VRM, DDR5 and PCIe Gen 5 support for graphics and storage, toolless M.2 heatsinks, one of which is huge and covers 2 drive slots, and an all-white aesthetic with a white PCB that I think looks really nice. Also love the onboard HDMI port for cleaner cable routing should you add a cool LCD screen to the inside of your PC. Our first off-brand component is the Clev Cras V, or 5, I'm not sure, RGB memory kit with 32 gigs of DDR5 6400 speed. Although some of you probably know this brand, Clev isn't exactly a household name in the PC world. But like most memory kits, this one uses dies from SK Hynix, one of the big 3 IC makers next to Samsung and Micron. Upon first impression, I was surprised by the clean aesthetic and solid build quality of the heatsinks, but we'll see later if they play nicely with AMD Expo, and of course how the LEDs look, that's important too. At $105 US, we're only saving a small amount here with similarly spec'd options from big brands like G-Skill and Corsair, so Clev doesn't get as much leniency as our next component, the Fanxiang S900 Pro, a PCIe Gen 5 NVMe M.2 SSD. Fanxiang is a memory and storage company I've never heard of prior to making this video, but they're one of the few lesser-known brands I found who offer a Gen 5 drive. This is the main reason I opted for the Aorus board. I simply couldn't find any off-brand options that supported Gen 5 storage, and while it's overkill in most scenarios, that didn't stop my side quest to find a knockoff SSD with the latest and greatest tech available. I snagged the 1TB S900 Pro for $120, saving a whopping $50 over popular alternatives. Fanxiang's advertised speeds are a bit slower, but not by much, with sequential reads and writes of 11,500 and 8,500 megabytes per second respectively, versus 12,400 and 11,800 from Corsair's MP700 Pro, which costs $60 more, and that's if you get it without the actively cooled heatsink. The S900 Pro includes a passive heatsink and mini screwdriver to remove it, revealing a trusted Phison controller beneath. This could be a good value proposition if it performs well in our testing later. Our cooler is the Red Dragon HL360, a 360mm AIO. Like many, I knew of Red Dragon from their ultra-budget peripherals, but never realized they made liquid coolers until now. The low price of $62 is a fraction of what premium 360mm AIOs cost, making it tough to beat so long as there's no major— oh my god, what is that? Did this come out of that submersible? Okay, it's probably just an example of very poor quality control, but this is the biggest dent in a radiator I've ever seen from a new AIO. Even though the positive reviews suggest I may have just gotten unlucky, this is still a pretty rough first impression. Thankfully, the mounting holes still line up, and the aluminum fins are flawless somehow. The rest of the unit looks okay with an infinity mirror, ARGB pump block, large copper plate, and sleeve tubing of higher quality than I was expecting. We won't get to test the included RGB fans since we'll be swapping them out, but despite them being PWM and daisy chainable, they feature cheaper blades that leave significant gaps between the fan frame, which doesn't bode well. Installation on AM5 was a breeze, however, and utilizes the stock mounting brackets for added convenience. Stay tuned to see if the cooler makes as big a dent to temperatures as it does to itself. Har har! Our case is the AL900 from VTrue. If that name sounds familiar to you, it's because it's the same brand who makes that asinine display board that I featured in last week's video, which you can watch here for more juicy details. Making that video piqued my interest in VTrue, leading me to give their latest fish tank a try. The AL900 is a dual-chamber ATX chassis featuring edge-to-edge tempered glass panels for $90, about $25 less than the comparable O11D Mini from Lee. Build quality of the AL900 is very good and offers a lot for a sub-$100 case. Full-length magnetic dust filters at the top and bottom, ample radiator support up to 360 at the top and bottom and 280 on the side, and support for new back connect motherboards like Asus BTF and MSI Project Zero for those wanting a cable-free aesthetic. It is worth noting that the right side panel is ventilated for your side fans and PSU, but there's no dust filters, so you might want to pick one or two up depending on your dust tolerance. There's a generous front I/O with USB-C and an LED button that controls the included 10-fan PWM ARGB fan controller. 10 fans! One for every fan mount in the case. That is how it's done, people. This was a pleasant surprise because it's not mentioned anywhere on the product page, but it should be because it's a great feature. It even comes with an RGB remote, which means less reason to use another garbage app. Behind the motherboard tray, there's plenty of room for cable management and a bracket that holds two 2.5-inch drives and one 3.5-inch drive simultaneously. The single 120mm ARGB fan at the rear is nothing to write home about, but we'll be replacing it and filling the case with these ARGB 120mm fans from iCooler. Of all the knockoff parts in this build, this is the most knockoffy. The infinity mirror aesthetic is a blatant ripoff of Lee's Unifan. They even named their product Unifan. You almost gotta admire them for giving 0 Fs and differentiating their product at all. In fact, the biggest difference is the price, with iCooler's 3-pack costing exactly half as much as Lee's, letting me save well over $100 on my multi-pack purchase. The build and blade quality is pretty decent and a hell of a lot better than those Red Dragon fans, though that's not saying much. Like the original unis, each bank of fans can be daisy-chained with a slide-in mechanism, albeit one that uses gold pins instead of contacts, instilling a touch of fear that one might bend or break in the process. Fortunately, I made it through unscathed. At the end of each fan cluster, you only need to connect one cable that branches off into a 4-pin PWM and 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB connector, making me especially thankful for that included RGB fan controller. The fans are available with either standard or reverse blades, so I chose both models for enhanced aesthetics, hoping the RGB lighting won't be an eyesore once powered on. That is, if it doesn't explode first. For the power supply, I chose an 850-watt unit from GameMax, a brand that doesn't have the rosiest reputation for their PSUs. They've been bashed repeatedly for selling unreliable units despite having thousands of mostly positive reviews. Surprisingly, Mozilla's Fake Spot extension, a tool for grading the authenticity of Amazon reviews, gave the unit I purchased an A. But the shorter 5-year warranty and occasional nightmare review still have me skeptical. A power supply is the last component you should roll the dice on, and I would highly recommend just getting a reliable unit from one of the many reputable brands on the market, even if you have to shell out some extra cash. That said, I still pulled the trigger on this questionable unit in the spirit of the video. It's fully modular, 80+ gold, allegedly, and ATX 3.0 certified. While the unit does feature a 12-volt high-power connector, it doesn't come with a compatible cable, probably as a safety measure to put an extra step between you and exploding. As such, I'll be using this white PCIe adapter I had lying around, although a proper cable would have been ideal. Regardless of its shortcomings, the PSU features RGB lighting to let you know that your IED has been activated. Our graphics card is the MaxSun RTX 4070 Super iCraft Limited Edition OC, which has been blessed by the power of Enchantment Heart Princess. Who is this mysterious cat girl? Where did she come from? And why would she run her clothes in the dryer for so long? Maxsun is a small China-based company who makes GPUs, motherboards, and storage products, with many of their higher-end GPU offerings featuring cute anime girls and sometimes sweet treats. This purchase was more focused on the build's theme and less on savings. With an eye-watering price of $750, this is more than anyone should ever spend on a 4070 Super. But existing US tariffs on China make the vast majority of these off-brand cards pretty costly, with 4080 Supers going to the tune of $1,400. At the very least, the build quality of this 3-slot card is superb, with premium materials like a metallic accent on the end and a gloss finish with ceramic-like warmth that I would normally hate but looks great here and feels far from cheap. It features triple start-stop fans atop a beefy heatsink and an onboard button to control its RGB lighting. Unfortunately, it only cycles between 3 different lighting modes, but again, I'll take anything over an app. On the backplate is some artwork of our favorite cat girl who, for whatever reason, just can't stop dropping things.
Oops.
Standard video outputs include 3 DisplayPort and 1 HDMI. Time will soon tell if the Heart Princess lives up to her name and enchants me with the spoils of performance and cooling, or if this is all just a ruse to take my money and run. Wrapping up the build is an RGB cable cover set from Techware. This is yet another Lian knockoff, this time mimicking their streamer cable extensions. However, these aren't extensions at all, but universal covers that simply cling to your PSU cables. The set includes one cover for a 24-pin ATX cable and another for a 12-volt high-power cable. Although you can technically clip them to any cables you want, their width and length work best for the ones just mentioned. The cables are made of flexible PET that bends smoothly and feature a 3-pin 5-volt ARGB connector for daisy chaining. Installation took maybe 30 seconds, and the kit does include some clear braces to securely attach the covers to the cables. The entire kit was only $42, roughly a third of what it would cost to buy the same 2 Lian streamer extensions. Obviously, the streamer has higher manufacturing costs from having actual cables, but this is still a huge price difference that's worth noting. Looking at the finished build, there's a lot more to discuss now that the system's powered on. Shout out GameMax PSU for making it this far. We didn't know you had it in you. For one, the AL900 was super easy to build in and feels virtually identical to an O11D Mini. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, anticipating the moment I would go, there's the catch, but it never came. Outside of a few minor annoyances, like needing to unscrew 6 screws to remove the front panel, this is a killer case for the price, and even throws in some extras over the O11D Mini, like edge-to-edge panels, back connect motherboard support, and that 10-fan ARGB controller. Speaking of which, both the front panel LED button and the RGB remote work perfectly, letting you adjust a wealth of different lighting effects on the fly. We'll have a close look at CPU and GPU temps in a sec, but in a nutshell, the case's cooling performance is rock solid. For $90, I'm gonna say yeah, this is a good value, a great value even. For our Clev memory, I was able to set the AMD Expo profile without a hitch, hitting the kit's rated speed of 6400. The RGB transitions on these sticks are silky smooth, though brightness and color saturation are a little weak next to other DDR5 kits from top-shelf brands. Overall, I would probably forgo using off-brand memory in the first place since there's no shortage of premium kits that look better than this one for just a few bucks more. As for our Red Dragon AIO, the lighting could be a touch brighter, just like the memory sticks. It's not quite as lively as the other RGB parts in the build, and I wish the infinity mirror effect was more prominent. Even at a steep viewing angle, it's hard to see. Fortunately, the cooler more than makes up for my subjective nitpicks with performance, keeping the 7800X 3D in the mid to low 60s after 30 minutes in Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p. Not too shabby for a $60 AIO that escaped the QC line like it was Shawshank. Equal credit goes to the iCooler fans for keeping temps in check and staying nice and quiet out of the box. They also look great. They're plenty bright, vibrant, and display all of the lighting effects well. You can tell they don't have as many LEDs as the Lian Uni fans because in-motion effects like the classic rainbow wave don't move and transition the colors quite as smoothly, but for less than 15 bucks a fan, they're really good. The RGB on the Techware cable covers is on par for the most part. They're super bright with rich color, but the color transitions become pretty choppy, particularly when an effect is moving at slower speeds. By comparison, Lian streamer extensions offer perfectly fluid transitions and a lot more dynamic lighting effects to choose from if you're willing to pay the premium. Circling back to our Fansheng SSD that I had my own reservations about, I'm glad and frankly surprised to report that it actually beat its advertised speeds in our Crystal Diskmark test, with sequential reads of 11,678 and sequential writes of 9,589 megabytes a second. This makes it a viable bang for the buck option if you're one of the few users that can effectively utilize Gen 5's blistering fast speeds. Sorry for doubting you, little guy. We also need to take a moment to thank our Enchantment Heart Princess, not only for the sweet RGB action on our 4070 Super, but for the S-tier performance and cooling. In Cyberpunk at 2560 by 1440 with ultra ray tracing and DLSS set to quality, we saw a healthy average between 110 and 130 frames per second, with temps in the low 60s, never topping 63C. Max Sun's cooler does a fine job dissipating heat from our GPU while staying whisper quiet in the process. I'm actually kind of shocked how quiet this entire PC is under load. Even 2 feet away from me, I can't hear it at all over the AC in this room. This is a good PC. He's a good boy. When adding up all the money that we saved from these knockoff parts, except the GPU, which was an anomaly for this build, we saved a total of $310. We'll call it an even 300 since I added in that GPU adapter, but 300 bucks is a good chunk of change to put back in your pocket, or towards better parts in your build, like going from an RTX 4060 to a 4070 Super, for example. That's basically a free upgrade if you do the girl math. In the end, while some of these components appealed to me more than others, none of them struck me as flat out awful, which is hard to believe in a market flooded with sketchy off-brand hardware. It's reassuring to find that there are still so many decent options out there if you're willing to give them a chance. But that is going to do it for this one, guys. If you're subscribed to my channel, click the notification bell, please! Because YouTube hates me and won't show you my videos if you don't. Oh, God! Don't forget to toss a like on the video before you go. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and I'll see y'all in the next video.